Introduction to Federal Regulations Governing Railroads. 49 CFR 200 to 299. Railroads have been hauling passengers and freight in the United States since the mid-1800s. They were one of the first businesses to span the entire continent of North America. Railroads used technologically complex equipment and procedures. They employ hundreds of thousands of people and move millions more. They operate around the clock 24 hours per day and 365 days per year. They operate in almost every state and carry consumer and industrial goods along with hazardous material and foodstuffs. In order to move the people and the freight, it is necessary to have procedures designed to ensure safety and efficiency. This program will look at the federal regulations that have been developed to ensure the procedures are followed. In this program, you will see who develops the regulations, where the regulations can be found, who enforces the regulations, why regulations are necessary, who is governed by the regulations, what regulations cover, when regulations are enforced, where regulations apply, and what penalties may be assessed if the regulations are not complied with. Who develops regulations? Regulation is typically defined as a rule or directive made and maintained by an authority. The Commerce Clause, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3 of the U.S. Constitution gives Congress the power to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the states. Because railroads operate across state boundaries, the federal government is generally the regulating authority, although some states regulate some aspects of rail operations. The U.S. government is divided into three branches: the legislative, the executive, and the judicial. Congress is the legislative, the president heads up the executive, and the Supreme Court is the highest judicial body. Members of Congress are responsible for advocating the interests of the people in the states who elected them. Over the years, concerns from constituents has caused Congress to pass laws that control the behavior of individuals and companies, including railroads. An example is the Rail Safety Improvement Act of 2008, Public Law Number 110-432. This law required certain railroads to implement positive train control, adjust hours of service requirements, report information on grade crossings, and other items deemed necessary to improve safety. The executive branch is responsible for enforcing laws. The executive branch has departments that report to the president tasked with developing and enforcing regulations designed to ensure compliance with the laws passed by Congress. The Secretary of Transportation is responsible for all modes of transportation: highway, air, railroads, etc. Each mode has an administrator who is appointed by the president. The administrator has a staff that develops regulations designed to ensure the laws passed by Congress are implemented. As part of the regulations, fines, civil penalties, and criminal penalties are defined for non-compliance with the regulations. Where the regulations can be found. The Code of Federal Regulations, CFR, is the compilation of the general and permanent rules published in the Federal Register by the executive departments and agencies of the federal government. The code is divided into 50 titles, which represent broad areas subject to federal regulation. Each title is divided into parts covering specific regulatory areas. The CFR is revised at least once each calendar year. Title 49, Transportation, is composed of 9 volumes. The 4th volume, Parts 200 to 299, contains the current regulations issued under Chapter 2, Federal Railroad Administration. Other parts of the CFR may also apply to railroads, such as 49 CFR 174, Hazmat Carriage by Rail. The print version is published yearly and is the legal edition. Print copies may be purchased from the U.S. Government Publishing Office, Post Office Box 979050, St. Louis, Missouri, 63197-9000. An electronic code of federal regulations, ECFR, is a currently updated version of the Code of Federal Regulations. It is not an official legal edition of the CFR. The electronic version can be found at www.ecfr.gov. Who enforces the regulations? The Federal Railroad Administration also has about 400 safety inspectors who operate out of 8 regional offices. Each region has an administrator who is supported by 2 deputy regional administrators, chief inspectors, supervisory specialists, grade crossing safety managers, and safety inspectors for 5 of the safety disciplines focusing on compliance and enforcement in hazardous material, motive power and equipment, operating practices, signal and train control, and track. Why regulations are necessary. When regulations are not complied with, accidents can and do happen. For instance, in 2008, in Chatsworth, California, a passenger train collided with a freight train. 28 passengers were killed, and over 100 passengers were seriously injured. The National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, is an independent agency charged with determining the cause of transportation accidents and promoting transportation safety. NTSB investigated the Chatsworth collision and determined the probable cause was a regulation violation: the use of a cell phone that distracted the engineer from his duties. Safety rules were written in blood is a common but often true saying in industry. Who is governed by the regulations? Railroad safety statutes are applicable to any person, including a railroad and any manager, supervisor, official, or other employee or agent of a railroad who fails to comply with the regulations. Examples of regulations. The regulations cover many aspects of railroad operation. Here are a few examples. 49 CFR 213 Track Safety Standards. 49 CFR 214 Railroad Workplace Standards. 49 CFR 215 Railroad Freight Car Safety Standards. Each regulation may have many pages giving the details of the regulation. 49 CFR 213 Track Safety Standards has 81 pages. 49 CFR 214 Railroad Workplace Standards has 36 pages. When regulations are enforced. Generally, all regulations are in effect at all times. Some regulations have exceptions on when regulations are enforced. For instance, 49 CFR 215 Freight Car Safety Standards. 215.3 application states, this part applies to each car in service. 215.5 defines in service as means each railroad freight car subject to this part unless the car has a bad order or home shop for repair tag, is in a repair shop or a car repair track, or is on a storage track and is empty. Where the regulations apply. FRA's jurisdiction extends to all entities that can be construed as railroads by virtue of their providing non-highway ground transportation over rails. Self-contained urban rapid transit systems are an exception and are not generally covered by FRA regulation. For policy reasons, however, FRA does not exercise jurisdiction under all its regulations to the full extent permitted by statute. For example, all of FRA's regulations exclude railroads whose entire operations are confined to an industrial installation or plant railroads, such as those in steel mills that do not go beyond the plant's boundaries. Some rules exclude passenger operations that are not part of the general railroad system, such as some tourist railroads. The self-imposed restrictions on FRA's exercise of regulatory authority do not stop its exercise of emergency order designed to deal with imminent hazards. A railroad excluded from the reach of any FRA's regulation is fully within the reach of FRA's emergency order authority. What penalties may be assessed if the regulations are not complied with? Penalty schedules range from around $650 to over $100,000. Ordinary violations are usually around the $650 amount and willful violations around $25,000 based on the severity of the violation. FRA may assess a maximum penalty of up to $105,000 per violation where a grossly negligent violation has created an imminent hazard of death or injury or has caused death or injury. Criminal penalties may be applied to some hazmat regulation violations. If railroad employees, including managers, supervisors, and agents of a railroad, have demonstrated their unfitness to perform the safety-sensitive functions, they may be disqualified temporarily or permanently. Disqualified employees may file an appeal. Review. Congress makes laws and the Federal Railroad Administration develops regulations to assure compliance with the laws. The regulations are listed in the Code of Federal Regulations, which can be accessed in print or online at www.ecfr.gov. The Federal Railroad Administration is responsible for monitoring railroads to ensure they comply with the regulations. Regulations are necessary because non-compliance can lead to accidents and injuries, as shown in the NTSB report on the fatalities and injuries caused by an employee's violation of regulations governing the use of cell phones or other electronic devices. The regulations apply to any person, including a railroad, and any manager, supervisor, official, or other employee or agent of a railroad performing railroad service. The regulations cover a wide range of railroad operations. Generally, all regulations are in effect at all times. Some regulations have exceptions on when they are enforced. FRA's jurisdiction extends to all entities that can be construed as railroads by virtue of their providing non-highway ground transportation over rails. FRA may assess a maximum penalty of up to $105,000 per violation, where a grossly negligent violation has created an imminent hazard of death or injury or has caused death or injury. If railroad employees, including managers, supervisors, and agents of a railroad, have demonstrated their unfitness to perform the safety-sensitive functions, they may be disqualified temporarily or permanently. Disqualified employees may file an appeal. For more detailed information and to download a PDF overview and workbook, go to www.makingtracksmedia.com. When on railroad property, expect equipment to move on any track in either direction at any time. Thank you for your attention and your cooperation.